Live.
Yay!
Yes. And
It's been a while since we heard you say that, John.
I know. I'm actually back in my office, back in the United States.
Welcome back.
Yeah. So it was a long trip, and it was too exhausting of a trip because I didn't stay in one place long enough. When I did this 2 years ago, I was in places for mostly 3 weeks, and this was more of a whirlwind type of trip, and so it was definitely more exhausting. I'm not doing this kind of trip again. I may do long trips, but they'll be like 3 or 4 month or 3 or 4 week stints in a location, or maybe just one location for 2 or 3 months, and or short stints where I'm just like hitting things quickly, like I did when I did China last year. So it was good.
And they will have an open gyms nearby, right?
Right.
New requirement.
Not going to Italy in August, huh?
Yeah, that was interesting. I did end up finding gym. I ended up not missing any workouts the entire 2 months I was gone, including running. In fact, I ran a half marathon in Rome, just like spontaneously. I don't know. I think I talked about that.
Yeah, you did. Yeah.
Yep. So but I ended up somehow, like, even if I had to lift in a playground, but or pay $35.
John might be the only person I've ever heard use the phrase accidentally and spontaneously in conjunction with ran a marathon.
Yeah. So, but I'm glad to be back finally. I have to say though, when I came back, I went through like a weird, like I definitely put on about 20 pounds, and a lot of it fat. So when I left to go, I was in the best shape I'd ever been in. So it was kind of a big contrast. And so I had went through this, I think, small bout of depression, like the first few days when I came back. And I was like, which was Josh's greatest fear in life right now, is that John will say, "Fuck this, I'm tired of this shit." So I had that moment like for a little bit, and then I've actually gotten better at coaching myself out of it. And what I did was I was like, okay, like that was like for like the first couple of days, I was like, I don't really want to do anything. I don't feel like doing any of this stuff. And and part of it is too, like, just getting back on the 1 meal a day on the diet and the training program and all that. And then finally, I think like maybe like yesterday, I started to like break through the clouds, but I accelerated the process because I think it was yesterday or maybe the day before, I started saying to myself, like, you know what, fucking grind for 2 weeks. And it doesn't matter if you feel like it or not, or if you feel motivated or not, or if you feel like life is shit or not. Like, you can always make it 2 weeks, and then you can give up if you want. Like, it's the whole like deferred give up. Like, you can always give up tomorrow. And then I think just having that mindset made me, and I realized too that like this is like, because what I realized was going on, and I think this is something that I have to finally get into my psychology, is that when you have momentum, like you have success, I was equated to like the high water mark. Like, when you're having success and you're having momentum, like every day, the high water mark is a little bit higher. And so it gives you some motivation. If you don't feel like, doing some of the shit that you do, you're like, okay, like when you see on the scale, you're like, oh, I'm losing weight, or I'm gaining muscle, or I'm making money, or I'm writing chapters, or whatever it is. Like, you see that progress, and sometimes you still fall back a little bit, but the high watermark is still within view. And so that kind of keeps you motivated, and you've got momentum on your side. And so like when you have success, or when you're being successful, or you're doing the right thing, it's much easier to continue because of that momentum and that feeling that kind of drives you. If anything, even if you're having a shit day, or you don't have that intrinsic motivation, at least you can look at that high watermark and say, well, bam, I'm gonna hit it, and that kind of keeps you going forward. But then when you lose that, and this was kind of the furthest that I had fallen, like diet wise, I think, in a very long time, and then also just like losing the momentum of all the work that I was doing and whatnot. It's really, it becomes really difficult. Like, so, and I kind of empathize with a lot of people on my channel, that I can see now more how, because it'd been a very long time since I've been in this kind of dark place, I think, where I didn't have anything going for me that I was progressing on, right? You have to have some kind of growth. And I kind of I have a lot more empathy now because I can realize that like if you're in this place where your life is shit, where you like, or you're not accomplishing things, or you're hitting not any successes, or you fucked up really bad, or something like that, and it's like there's like just a dead stop in momentum. It's really, really, really hard to move again. Like it's like, and the only way that you're going to do it,
and
the
any
only
defeat
way
that you have, any little defeat just like takes you down that much
Exactly.
further.
You guys have been watching me the last few months, haven't you?
and honestly, that's how I think honestly that's how people get into deep depressions, is because that's where it starts. And then at that point you have two choices, and this is kind of like I felt like in the last couple of days I was like staring over the edge of the abyss, like leaning over it, and I could really see myself falling, and I had to say, look, you know, two choices, two roads. One road is to like let that, you know, stop you and say, you know, I don't feel it. There's something wrong with me. You know, this is not right. And the other road is just to say, you know what? The only way to get momentum is to push. And so fucking
to jump. Down, the momentum. If you're staring over the edge, man, you will have momentum if you jump. Trust me.
You'll gain momentum too.
but to have the mindset to say like, you know, I don't feel like it. I don't see any hope for the future. There's no reason. I have no motivation for doing this. The only thing that I trust right now is that what I think and what I feel right now is bullshit. That it's not true. That I'm under, you know, I'm under this guise. I'm under this self-deception. So I'm just going to work my ass off. I'm just going to fucking plow down the path, and I'm going to do it for some period of time, and then I'll revisit. And like, you know, it's like, it's really a leap of faith, like, because honestly, like, you don't feel like, you don't imagine this will work. Like everything in you says that no, but you have to just say, you know, if I just fucking hang on and grind it out, because the other road, it leads you down that downward fucking spiral. And it's like, if you make that wrong choice at that point, I think those are like those pivotal moments. Like coming out of that pit is going to be so much harder because I've made the wrong choice before. I think, and so I don't know. It doesn't mean that like that I'm not gonna, you know, not feel like doing stuff or you know, but I came out of that death spiral, I guess, and so yeah, it was it's a little scary, but there's my story.
Yeah, but I think there's some resiliency there too. I mean, you know, when I was going through the cash crunch that I went through, and then, you know, recently I had one of my larger sponsors essentially say they weren't going to renew for the next quarter. And, you know,
could you type in when you're done, could you type in the chat who that was? Because I'd like to, I think I know who it is. But I'd like to know, just because I'd feel better about myself as a person.
Yeah. Yes. That's what we thought.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah. So anyway, but yeah, so, you know, things got real hard, and yeah, you know, I was kind of in the same boat. I was looking over the abyss and just kind of going, you know, I don't know if I want to do this anymore. I don't know if I have it in me, right? But then I look at it and I start thinking, you know, well, what else am I going to do? And then I just go and do it. And I think, you know, some people, they just don't have that fortitude, or maybe they've been smacked in the head just one more time than they can take. And they go, you know what? I just don't care. I can't do this either. So anyway, you know, so I think it says a lot about just where you're at too, and, you know, your ability to deal with that. And I finally finished the book, You Are the Placebo.
Oh, yes.
And
nice.
so, you know, at the end, he starts talking about changing your mindset and changing the way that you view things and changing who you are. And now I really want to go read the Changing the Habit of Being You.
Yeah, that's a great book. Yeah.
But, you know, I mean, that's really what it is that it's not down to your circumstances. It's not down to, you know, where you're at. It's down to who you are. And if you're the kind of, and you can make yourself this kind of person, but if you're the kind of person that's going to go in and do that stuff, if you're the kind of person that's going to stand up and raise your hand and say, I'm not going to be the victim. I'm going to go and actually own this. I mean, that's what makes the difference. And yeah, I mean, you know, everybody's in a different spot, and I'm not going to, you know, pretend that for some people it's harder than others, but you know, we ultimately have control over this. And if you don't, then why the heck even try? And so, yeah, if you get to that hard spot and it's like, okay, well, I'm going to give up. But for me, you know, the giving up is I'm looking over the abyss, and what you're feeling is the road back is freaking hard. I mean, exactly. It sucks. It sucks hiking up that hill again and again and again, right? And so you're looking over the cliff and you're like, you know what? I wouldn't have to do any work if I jumped. Right?
exactly.
So, you know, gravity is just going to give me the momentum. I mean, it's going to be painful when I get to the bottom, but I'm not thinking about that right now. I'm thinking about a free trip that's not a freaking slog up that stupid hill one more freaking time. And so, you know, you start looking at it. But once you start to really consider what's down there, you know, the rocks, the river, whatever, right? It's, you know, and sometimes it's not terrible, right? You know, for me, it's, I'd have to go get a full-time job, which I know I wouldn't be happy at. Right. But it's not the worst thing ever. It's just close.
Yeah. So, but in that case too, like, and that's the same thing as it's like, if that's what's at the bottom of the abyss, right? Or, you know, then you might as well fucking charge up the hill. And then, like, if you run out of steam and some fucking ogre with the club smacks you down into the abyss, then you're in the same, like, at least you didn't jump yourself, right? Like, it's like the same. So you might as well give it the best fucking try. That's where I, you know, kind of came to is that whole, the other thing too, with that is like, and this might help you too, Chuck, is I found that what I have to do is erase the previous high water mark. It's a new thing now, right? So it's like, because if you think of it in your mind as charging up this hill that I've already been up, then it's like in Vegas, like losing a bunch of money and then just trying to get back to even. Just trying to get back. I'll make a fucking deal with you, God, if you just get me back. Like, I would never do this again. All I want to do is get back to even. And that's the worst feeling. Instead, you got to say, look, the loss is the loss. Whatever. Tidal wave came, wiped out my city. Fine. Now I'm building a new city. I'm not rebuilding the old city. I'm building a new city. And that will give you the momentum. And then you can be excited about what you're doing and what you're accomplishing again. But if you keep on comparing it to that nice, beautiful city that you had before the tidal wave came, man, you're going to be in trouble, because you're always going to, until you get back to even, it's going to be a slog, and then you're never going to get any victories or joy, because you're going to say, well, I used to have this, right? And so you just got to like erase that old watermark and start it over.
And that's exactly where I'm at now. So you know, we're talking kind of conceptually out here, but let's get to specifics for a minute. Okay. You know, so last year I just got into QuickBooks. I was talking to Jamie yesterday, my business coach. And she's like, we were just looking at, you know, what are you going to do through the end of the year? You know, how are you going to, you know, make ends meet, make money, whatever. And she's like, by the way, how much did you make last year? And the business last year grossed about $325,000. And so I'm looking at the numbers for this year, and there's no way I'm going to make as much this year as I did last year. And so I'm looking at it and I'm going, okay, you know, you know, things have been tough this year. It's just, you know, it sucked. I've been knocked down this hill a whole bunch of times. And, you know, just realizing that I don't need to go back to where I was. You know, I don't need to get back to that same place.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then the other thing is it's like, look, what is a way forward? You know, not the same path that I've been taking. You know, what is a way forward? And so that's allowed me to make a couple of different calls. So, for example, Eric, I know he's going to hear this because he edits this show. You know, I had him doing the editing, but I didn't have him doing the show notes for my shows. And I was having a problem getting the show notes done for my shows. And the way that I had it done before was Mandy did all the editing and show notes. And then I got it to the point where, you know, I had these companies doing all the editing and show notes. And so I switched it up, and I kept trying to just find people to do the show notes. And eventually, you know, it's like, well, maybe there's a different way. And so I asked Eric if he could do the show notes, because he's been reliable. And so we're doing that. And, you know, I'm sure there are going to be some hiccups that, you know, he'll do something that's not exactly what I want. But, you know, it's a different way forward.
Did you end up shortening it like we talked about too?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, John, this was funny. So last week we had this discussion about how so Chuck had this like really like basically his formula for the show notes was like almost like an index of the content of the podcast. So it's halfway between a transcript and show notes. And we were talking about it. We were like, what are the show notes really for? They're basically like an ad. It's a sales pitch for the episode. And just to give people some idea. And so, maybe you could cut it down to 100 words instead of 800 words. And then it's not so hard to do anymore.
Yeah. I've had to do the show notes myself, at least for the last for last week's shows and this week's shows. But starting next week, Eric's going to take that over. And it's funny too, because I can't even tell you how much of a relief it is. And yeah, it's just, you're talking about just getting back to breaking even, right? And right. That's what I want, I just want to be able to move forward. I want to feel like I'm not losing momentum. And, and so, yeah, taking these steps. And then
one thing to throw in there, Chuck, is it would be interesting to look at your profitability in addition to that, if you haven't done that, because last year you had some pretty large expenses that you don't have anymore.
That's true.
So like one thing John and I have seen from being in Perry Marshall's mastermind group is that you can like your monthly revenue is not really so important. Like what's important is profit. Mm-hmm. And we're one of the smaller businesses revenue wise, but we're probably one of the most profitable, if not the most profitable. And and that's going to greatly increase, I think, here. And any money that we add now is basically profit. So
right,
because we're very cautious about adding overhead. And I'll bet you that if you looked at it that way, I mean, not that you don't want to get back to that income level, but I bet you if you looked at it that way, things wouldn't look so bleak. And you've had to do you've had to invest a lot of your own time, which has slowed the business down because of that, that getting rid of some of those expenses. So,
yeah. Well, and I'll say it outright. I mean, last year, just over 1/3 of that gross income. Mm-hmm. Well, no, just over 1/4 of that gross income went to Mandy.
Yeah.
And yeah, the internet can yell and scream because I talked about her again. But the year before that, it was almost 50% of my gross revenue went to her.
Yep.
And so yeah, you're probably right, because I'm definitely not paying people what I was paying her to get this work done.
And right. And one thing I focused on too, go ahead, Josh.
I was just going to say it's been painful.
Super painful.
But you're working through it.
And well, actually, to add right onto that, actually, is one thing I think in both the books that you're reading, Chuck, from the Millionaire Mind, right? Millionaire Minds,
Secrets of the Millionaire Mind. Yeah.
Exactly, Secrets of the Millionaire Mind, and also same thing being preached by what's his name? I can't remember his name now. The author of. Yeah, exactly. I read the book, the Breaking the Habit of Being You. I didn't read the other one, but same concept is essentially this: is it's like who you are determines what you get, or essentially what your environment becomes. And so, like, if the focus is on the environment and the business and that, I mean, not that you don't pay attention to those things,
right?
But if the focus is on that, that's not really the thing that's going to, like, if you become the person that is the multi-million-dollar business owner, if you develop the character and the attributes and the person, if the focus is on becoming that, then the other thing will come automatically.
Yeah.
And that's kind of, I have to remind myself that too, is it's like the goal here is to expand myself because when I expand myself, then those things will come automatically. And so, like, some of these trials and some of these things that you're going through and this pain, it's like, well, but the net effect is that, yes, if you look at the numbers, revenue or whatever, but the net effect is that, are you growing as a person going through these experiences? And obviously you are, right? I mean, obviously some of these things led you down the path of some of these books as well. And you're changing your mindset and those things. And so it's like, right now you're playing in the little leagues, and it doesn't matter what the score is at the little league game, because you know that you're going to the major leagues. And so like if you're just like focused on the little league score, then you're going to have a problem, because that's not what we're here for. We're here for the major leagues. And so, you know, once you get there, the only way you get there is by the train. Like the little leagues is just to beat you up enough in order to grow you enough in order to make you ready for the major leagues. And so I kind of try to remind myself that all the time too, as you're hitting these walls and stuff, is it's like the focus is not the number. I mean, that's what keeps you alive, but the focus is the growth. And so, yeah, so there you go.
Yeah. The one thing though with that is that I see all of these ways forward, right? I see these ways to grow. I see these ways to expand the capabilities in the business and things like that. And then I get bogged down by this stupid stuff like podcast episodes not getting published on time because the show notes aren't done, or a little bit of a slowdown with the sponsorships because I wasn't diligent about following up. And so, now I'm working like crazy to try and, make everything go together the way that it needs to. And so it frustrates me because I can't move forward like you're talking about. I can't level up because I'm spending all my time spinning my wheels over here doing something that I want somebody else to do.
But you're figuring out where you messed up. I think that's what you know what I'm saying. Like you're putting in a new process, and it's funny because I always do this video, like, and people just hate it on YouTube when I talk about, like, I did one with Josh where I talked about Josh, coming on as owning part of the business, and how, like, he had basically taken me up on the offer of making me $50,000 or something, and people hate these videos because they're like, oh, they whine about it, and the answer is that it's like the value in the business is the process.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
That's the value. And so, like, yes, I mean, you have other ideas and stuff, but like, if this is not functioning, there's a process problem.
Right.
And so even though you're like, you're thinking I can do all these other things, and yes, I agree, but once you nail this thing down and you have this working like a smoothly oiled machine, and and it's getting better because you're figuring out all the wrong ways, all the things that don't work, all the ways that the wheels fucking fly off of the vehicle and the car crashes, and your car has crashed here and here and here and here. But you're figuring it out and you're not making those same mistakes again. And so now, like, what's going to come out of this as you're going through this pain and you're going through this is going to be that well-oiled process that people won't even, they're like, this is stupid. This is simple. This isn't worth money. Like you like how you do a podcast and then you get the show notes and publish it.
Right.
This is obvious common sense. And the secret is that is worth a whole fucking lot of money because it took you so many years to develop that, because you had to crash that car. And if they try and just come up with their own thing, they don't realize they're going to crash their car 50 times first. Right. So like what you're doing is really, really important and really, really valuable. And once you nail this down, then, I mean, you'll get, and we've had to struggle with this in simple program. I mean, like the YouTube process that we've got for pumping out these videos, it's fucking solid, right? I mean, this is like, it's gold, and people don't realize how valuable and important that is, but there was a lot of pain in getting there. So I think what you're working on is really, really important. And,
and think about it too. Like, so you just eliminated another big expense. You don't have to pay $20 an episode anymore to have show notes done, right?
Yeah, I do, because Eric upped his rate. Well, it's just totally worth it to me. But at the same time, I mean, I don't have the hassle of worrying about it anymore.
Yeah.
Right.
Because I know it's going to get done.
Right. And you've got a pipeline efficiency now here, right? You took two pieces and merged them together.
I would maintain that the new way that you're doing show notes is going to be a lot less expensive going forward than an 800 word summary. So you've saved some chunk of money by doing it that way.
Yeah.
You've carved off some waste.
Yep. But anyway, so that's what I've been fighting with this week, is just I'm trying to get those processes nailed down. It was funny because I kept looking at all the other stuff I've got going, and I'm like, I've got to do this and I've got to do that. I've got to work on this. I've got to go work on that. And it was like, no, the fundamentals of my business are broken.
Right.
So I got to fix those first. Right?
Engine's on fire.
I can throw an hour or two at Ruby Dev Summit, and I can throw an hour or two. My business coach, she mentioned that I should reach out to some of the speakers from Angular Dev Summit and some of my other friends in the Angular community that have digital products and see if I can pull together a bundle. But that would only take me a couple hours to set everything up and set up a page where people can buy it. So, you know, I can spend a few hours working on that. But everything else goes into fixing these fundamental processes. And so I did a couple of things there. One is I actually hired a project manager.
Okay.
Oh, interesting.
And so, and I mean, he's going to be working with Eric and Gerald to kind of keep things rolling along as they need to. But he's also going to be working with me to do a lot of the planning and process stuff. The other thing, though, that I'm looking for is that I want to start sitting down with him every week and talk about some of these projects that I have going. Like the ongoing things, we're definitely going to figure those out. The, you know, the sponsorship, prospecting, and the podcast processes, and the publishing and all that stuff. But these other things, the conferences and the, you know, the bundles and the products that I want to build and things like that, and figure out how to do those as well and set things up so that there's a process behind those. And a lot of those revolve around what I'm spending my time on, or if I get the fundamentals figured out, what I should be spending my time on. And so he's also going to help me either project manage myself, or he's going to, you know, do some of the project management with me as well. But I tend to, when I start looking at a project, I'll get the next few steps in, and that's all the detail that I really care to put into it.
Yeah.
And so then what happens is I get those couple of things done, or something is on fire and I go put it out, and then it's like, okay, now what do I do? And so I need somebody to help me just nail down the rest of those steps. And so that's what I'm kind of looking for with him. And then he's also going to help me. I've kind of made a mess in Asana. And I was like, what project management software do you want to use? And he actually is going to help me get set up in Jira, which
never heard of it.
It's a bug control. It's like Java.
Okay. It's written in Java. It's a product management software, but it comes bundled with Confluence, which is it's a wiki, but it has a WYSIWYG editor in it.
Yeah.
Is that a web app? Is Jira?
Yeah, Jira.
Okay, I'm looking at it here.
But anyway, so if I can.
Oh, Atlassian. Okay.
Yeah. So the thing that I like about it is it has a whole bunch of different templates for different types of projects, and then the other thing that I like about it is that it ties directly into Confluence, and so I can move all of my process documents over there. Put in the how-tos, put in the videos, and then I can just manage everybody's access in one place, and I can refer to one from the other, and I don't have to remember to share Google Drive or Dropbox or wherever I put these documents, because they'll all just be in that wiki.
Interesting.
But you can set up Trello / Kanban style boards. You can do that in Asana as well. You can do task management. You can do
Trello with some project management overlay, like dashboards and stuff overlaid.
Yeah, and that's the other thing I like about it is that it'll show me all the stuff that's assigned to me, and Asana does that as well, but it's kind of turned into this huge mess.
Yeah.
So anyway, so I'm excited about that, and I've hired a project manager to help me just figure out how to think about this stuff and figure out how to set up these projects. And he's also going to manage the ongoing processes that involve Gerald and Eric, so that's the other thing I've been bad at is, you know, the checking in and making sure that stuff's getting done and things like that. Yep. So he's going to manage that for me, and that way.
Who is this? I'm curious, like what his background is, and.
So he's from Costa Rica. I found him on Upwork.
Okay.
But he's got a whole bunch of experience working with software projects and other projects. We talked for a while on Wednesday. So.
John, this might be interesting to try, like hiring somebody to manage one project for us.
The only thing though, my only hesitation, like I've thought about this before, is that like as far as managing the projects, we don't have like necessarily active, very high touch projects usually going, right? I mean that continuously, and so like the things that like the processes and stuff, we don't really need someone to manage, like for example the YouTube and podcasting, because Rodrigo's already got that nailed. So we've kind of gone the route of saying, okay, the people we have and the processes we have, we create them in such a way that they don't need to be managed.
Right.
Now when we do the one-off projects, there is some, but you're right, but the value, I think, and this is why I want to talk to I guess I'm trying to think if I should say his name or not, but someone who had reached out to us that wanted to initially make courses, which I want to see, but essentially I think what we need is someone that is capable of managing the but I've always thought like someone that kind of thinks at our level, that has a programming background, that can not just manage the project, but understand really the depth of it and do some work on the project. So that's kind of where I'm thinking, because I'm thinking like if we had a project manager right now, what I'd rather have is someone like, we've got a ton of ideas and opportunities, but we need someone to be able to execute on those opportunities. And that's a project manager by themselves probably won't be able to execute on the opportunities that we have, because they don't know enough about programming and background and stuff. And they could try and hire and find people, but it seems like it'd be better to have someone that's kind of at our level of thinking, either someone with a really good marketing background or programming, or both preferably. And they could just like, we could say, okay, look, here's a lot of opportunities here. And we tried this with someone, again, I won't say name, but we had this person kind of pegged out for it. But I feel like we got to find that person that can do that, because then we could say, look, Josh and I, this is kind of the role, like, that we have, and like we want you to kind of work at the level of, like, Josh and I are working on the main stuff that we're focusing on, and then we've got all these opportunities here, and like your job is to go and like look at these opportunities, go and find which ones you think would be most valuable, grab them, take a hold of the project, and execute on those things with just minor feedback from us, and so you can be like simultaneously running a different thread. That's kind of what I'm seeing, but we've got to find that person. It's almost like an entrepreneurial type of, like,
I was going to say, you're hiring an entrepreneur.
Yeah. Then that's the challenge, is that somebody who's entrepreneurial, like the tendency is going to be that they want to do their own thing, or they very quickly get to the point where they are ready to go do their own thing. So we'll probably find somebody at some point, but it's going to be.
Yeah, and the piece of it too, like if you think about it, like, is there's plenty of people that have the entrepreneurial spirit that would want to have, well, that are in two categories. I think this is what we're looking for. Is one is that they appreciate the value of sort of an internship of like, because if you can work with us and we're already successful, we're already running this, before you buy that McDonald's franchise, maybe you should like work at McDonald's, right? And this is kind of that thing. And so I think we could find someone like that with also offering the opportunity, like, okay, well, if you really grow this, I mean, this can be your entrepreneurial venture. Like, you can kind of take over a division at Simple Programmer, and like you can sort of like, if you create a lot of profit, we'll bring you into the business in some way, a bigger capacity, and you'll be able to get a reward based on that. Or the other one is just someone who has that on, because there's a lot of people that have the entrepreneurial mindset, but they're risk averse.
Right.
So they've got like the psychology behind understanding like how to think outside the box and all of these things, but they're just never going to be comfortable with the risk involved. And so those kind of people are good ones perhaps to have like in an organization where you're sort of providing an extra shell where they can be entrepreneurial within like you've got the little safety box for them. And so I think either one of those could work.
Well, the other thing is even if you bring somebody in that eventually bails on you, and they're around for 2 or 3 years and they build a thing, and then they're like, you know what, I'm going to go out on my own and do my own thing now, because they've made enough money. Maybe it's that, right, where they're just risk averse enough to where you know what, I don't have $100,000 in the bank, so they work for Simple Programmer for a few years building a thing, and now they have $100,000 in the bank, so they go off and do their own thing. I mean, that's not a bad thing for you guys either, because then you have an established business that somebody else can come in and you know, just keep running.
And like knowing what I know now, if I were back like, you know, like 18 or 19 or 20 or even in my mid 20s, and I were thinking entrepreneurially, and someone gave me an opportunity like a Simple Programmer to work at, and I was thinking about starting my own business, or I would definitely, like, I would work for way less than what my regular salary was at a job. Like, I'm making like 6 figures as a developer. I would say, no, I'll just like 40, whatever I need to get by, like 40 grand. Cool. And I would do it for 2 years just to gain that kind of experience and knowledge, and knowing that that's going to boost me so far ahead and the rest of my, so, I mean, like, I can see that now that I would do that myself. So it's kind of hard because you got to kind of put yourself in that mindset of, otherwise it seems like, oh, who would ever do this? It doesn't make sense. If they could make money on their own, why? But it's not, because like, you haven't done it before. You don't have the capital. Like, there's a lot of reasons why someone who might have ability is not doing it themselves. So
right.
Plus, there's a long runway too, right? I mean, it's like, you could have a brilliant entrepreneurial mindset, but guess what? You're going to be slogging for 3 or 4 years building the business before you actually can even utilize any of those, like the major skills of operating a larger business, because it takes that long. You got to get traction.
Well, and I've had a few friends that have, you know, they've started ventures, and, you know, the payoff was going to be a few years, so they moved on to another venture as well. I mean, there are so many options out there, but you know, if you can find somebody and you can give them the kind of mentorship they need, I mean, I see it as a win-win. And it'd be interesting to see how that all goes. But you know, if you're looking for somebody that has an entrepreneurial mindset and a programmer mindset, that might be a little trickier to find. I don't know.
Where could we find those
a marketing
who would be? It's like, I don't know where we could find those kind of people. What kind of podcasts and stuff would they be interested in?
I don't know. By the way, they may be listening to us.
Oh, by the way, I interviewed James Damore 2 days ago on the channel. So.
People are going to drive down from Mountain View and light your house on fire now.
Apparently so. It was good though. It was interesting. Yeah, I was looking through, like, everybody interviewed. Like, he was on, Joe Rogan interviewed him.
Oh, he was interviewed by a bunch of people.
Yeah, Ben Shapiro interviewed him. I think Milo interviewed him. Stephen Molyneux interviewed him. Who's the professor guy? I always forget his name. I can't remember now, but he got a ton of press. So, we'll see what happens. But
I mean, it's something that people are talking about, and for the most part, you fall into one of a couple of camps. You're either, and everybody's hearing about it, so you're either on board with the activists, in which case you know who he is and you hate his guts, right?
Yeah.
Or you completely disagree with the activists, and you hate everything they stand for, in which case you're totally over in his camp. And then everybody else in the middle is just sick of hearing about it.
Yeah.
And so, you know, the fact that he kind of got the axe to the neck about it, you're like, you know what? This is finally bringing this fight to a place where we can actually say, yeah, you know what? It's going too far. Quit yelling at me about it. He's fine, or whatever, right? And so it's really interesting. But yeah, it's got to be killing people on the activist end of things that he's getting so much press.
Well, okay, again, this is, and I said this in the interview with him. I was really shocked when they fired you, because I told him, I was like, look, if I'm putting on my evil schemer, Google, evil scientist hat, what I do is
Catbert, the human resources director.
Exactly. Yeah. So I'm putting on the Catbert hat. What I do is, I'm the HR manager at Google. You just to release this memo. I treat it as, oh, that's cute. And I say, okay, how should I handle this? Oh, I know what I'll do. So let's create a new committee, and I'm going to make this James guy the head of this committee on alt-right sympathy or diversity expanded, or you know what I mean, or maybe we already have a diversity committee, and I'll put him as some kind of role representation on there, give him some lofty title, and then in concordance with his title, I will give him a nice pay boost to compensate him for his extra work that's going to be involved in that, and that's it. And then essentially bribe him, right, and placate him, and then I'm paying him to shut up, right, and then next day, you know, everyone forgets about who James Damore is and this whole Google manifesto, and he doesn't say anything, and he's happy, and you know what I mean? Like that. Yeah. That's my evil Catbert way of dealing with it. The stupid way to deal with it is to make him a martyr. Like, and that's like, fire him and make him a martyr, and then every single fucking media outlet in the world interviews him, and he has a huge platform to preach his message, and now he's, you know, gosh, such a stupid move, just from a strategic 48 laws of power, like just like, you know, Machiavellian type of mindset, like stupid move.
Well, and I have to say, you know, I mean, he needs to get all of his media appearances now, because when Google settles that wrongful termination suit, they're going to put a gag order in it.
Oh yeah, they will, sure. Yeah. So, and then he'll be tested, like that. And then it'll be the but it's fine, because he's hurting himself now for the. It's good. I mean, he's a brave guy, because he's hurting himself for the lawsuit. Is what he's doing. He is, but it's in some way it's like a like I'm. You know, I feel bad for the guy, but I'm glad they martyred him, because it brought it out into the forefront, and it pointed how ridiculous this is. Like that we're actively as a society now, with majority of college students supporting this in college campuses, squelching free speech. Like, hello, like you know, popular opinions or unpopular opinions, fine, but are we really like actually getting behind squelching free speech? Are we really getting to the point where we're saying, not only is your opinion morally decrepit and I disagree with you and I hate you, but I don't even want to hear it, and you don't have the right to express it. And if you even say it, there'll be consequence. Like, wow. Like if we get to that point in society, we're in a danger zone. You know, I was just talking to one of my kind of left-leaning friends, and we were going for a run, and I was telling him about how the pendulum swings, and it's important and it's good. It's like, I'm glad that we have Trump, and I'm glad that we have Bernie Sanders. As much as I don't like Bernie Sanders, he's a necessary evil for us to have, or you could say a necessary good, whatever. But it's necessary to have this yin and yang, and for the pendulum to swing both directions, because that's what keeps us going. Is we've got it. Otherwise, if we just have Trumps, right, in the world, we will have tyranny. And if we just have Bernie Sanders, we'll have Stalins and communism. Like, you see what I'm saying? Like, we have to have that in order to strike that balance. And so the only thing that keeps that pendulum swinging is free speech, is that people can say things without repercussions, whether they be political, governmental, or just shame, or just societal, right, shaming people in these repercussions. And when people are living in a place in time, historically, we've seen this multiple times, but when people live historically in a period of time where it is not, where there are major repercussions for speaking a divergent viewpoint, we go into dark ages, right? Yeah. We spent how many hundreds of years in dark ages as a society because of the Catholic Church, because of a governmental, right? The Catholic Church, the Inquisitions, the squelching of any kind of dissented thought. It finally ended in the Reformation, or the not the Reformation, Renaissance period, and in Italy, when finally new blood came in, and that's, you know, that's stopped being the case. But until then, we were in dark ages. So, and the same thing has happened in China. I mean, we've seen this in a lot of places historically in the world. So that's the one thing, and that's like it's like, that's why I want to interview James. Is like, I don't care. Like, I mean, I have a horse in the game. I have a side, and I have a viewpoint on this. But more important than anything else, he needs to be able to speak and say what he said without repercussions, because if that's the thing that I think, like, we should all, regardless of our political affiliations or whatever we think, that we should all band behind the idea that, like, hey, look, give people platforms and let them, even if they're going to talk idiot speak, and even if it's blasphemy and bullshit and whatever, let them speak.
Yep. Well, yeah, and I feel like, you know what, I have the right to limit free speech on my front lawn.
Right.
But that's you can't, you know, I don't want you on my lawn anymore. So if you go on the road, there's nothing I can do.
Right.
And, you know, and I'm not going to protest you or whatever. You know, I'm not going to try and shut down your speech. But, you know, if you're being offensive, then yeah, get off my lawn. And, you know, to that degree, I think it's interesting too, because I feel like, you know, employers should be able to fire people for any reason.
Yeah, I'm 100% behind Google's right to fire him.
Well, they have the right.
Yeah, but what I'm not,
I don't know if it was the right thing to do. Yeah.
What I don't support is the we're gonna hunt down people that we don't like and destroy their lives. Like that mindset, you know, like physically and emotionally, and it's so ugly. It does happen on both sides. But in particular in this case, you know.
Yeah, well, Gamergate was the same thing going the other way, and it was wrong too. Yeah. But you know, it's kind of interesting too, because like Uncle Bob Martin, he wrote an article that basically, you know, it was kind of an allegory for this, and it wasn't very subtle at all. But
Uncle Bob, subtle is not a term that I hear used for him a lot.
Yeah, so, but anyway, so he made the point, right? He expressed his opinion. It may have been right, it may have been wrong, but he shouldn't have been fired for it. And people went after him too. Like they went out and tried to get, you know, speaking engagements that he had to cancel on him, you know, and all kinds of stuff. And I'm like, look, like the guy didn't even take James Damore's side as far as, you know, how we treat women in tech. He just said he shouldn't be fired for his opinion, and people are after him. And it's all because if you're not with us, it's scorched earth. And it's I mean, it's just, it doesn't help anything. If we can come to understand each other and we can make sure that we're serving each other well, then we may not agree on everything, but we can at least have a constructive dialogue and solve some of these problems that we're trying to solve. But if you're just going to get in people's face and yell at them and shut them down, I actually have to fight the bias that I have on some issues that I know aren't entirely wrong, because I get yelled at about them so often that I just don't want to hear about them. And I'm like, no, I actually need to have that conversation because there's something important here and there's something constructive that can come out of it. But at the same time, I'm just like, I don't want to touch it because I'm so tired of getting punched in the face about it. And so I see that with a lot of other folks. It's just, you know, yeah, why can't we just have a dialogue about it? And, you know, if we don't come to agree in the end, then that's fine. But at least we understand each other, and maybe we can find something that is at least more palatable for each of us, depending on who has the power.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And that's unfortunately, and that's the thing. And that's the thing that is really the most disturbing, is that the opposite of that is what's being preached. Because, you know, anytime you take the moral high ground and you've got the moral authority to like silence an opinion because it's so reprehensible that it doesn't even deserve to be discussed, right? And if you make that judgment call about some opinion, then that's where you're in that danger zone. That's where the bullying happens. That's where the shaming people happens. Like, you can't bully and shame people unless you're in a position of a moral high ground of judging, to say that your ethical or moralistic position is so above, and you as a person are so above this other person in their viewpoint, that they should be completely vilified and that they should be shut down and shouldn't even have the right to, it's not, we don't even need to discuss this because it's wrong, right? That's, this is, so many fallacies have happened historically because of that viewpoint, and so many travesties and, you know, tyrannies and gross violations of human rights have happened just based on that one. Because once you go that direction, then you're essentially, it's dehumanizing people. And when you dehumanize a person, you can do anything to that person because they're no longer a person, they're an object. And so that's the thing that I'm against more than anything. I mean, I've got friends from all walks of life and spectrums of life, and I'm happy to hear their viewpoint and whatnot, and maintain them as a friend. But the one enemy that I just will never make friends with is the one who who tries to squelch that viewpoint, who doesn't want to have the dialogue,
Yeah.
who just says, based on this, like we've already shut the book on this. We don't need to discuss this. You're just you're worthless. You're garbage. So.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting too. I mean, I think the point that I would make, or the illustration I would give on some of this, is just that racism, right? It's something that mostly universally people agree is bad. You know, there are obviously groups out there that don't. But I mean, if somebody came to me and actually was trying to convince me that, you know, black people are inferior mentally or whatever, I mean, my response would be, you're a horrible person. My response would be, let me introduce you to some people, right? Let me introduce you to some black people that I know are smarter than me, right? And, you know, and let that kind of make the point, right? Where it's, now you're, you know, let me give you the experience and the context to understand why I feel the way I feel. These are people that, you know, directly contradict what you're saying.
Well, and the other piece of it too, I mean, we're going to delve into some dangerous waters here, but I will say that, like, that is a valid viewpoint to have, like, and it's scientifically backed to some degree. What I'm saying is, like, there is some science to support some things. So what I'd say is that, like, and again, this is like something that you should never discuss, but it does exist, and we should examine this, which is, like, are there differences in ethnicity and race, in intelligence, average IQ intelligence levels, and height, and or any kind of attributes that are controlled genetically? And the answer is, actually, the research is difficult to find because no one likes to talk about it. But yes, there are, and it turns out that actually the highest IQ bracket, like of races, is actually Asian. Is so they actually score higher, like, as an average, and that there's varying degrees of different, and that's just something that's genetically predisposition, just like height has, like, you know, Chinese people are a lot shorter in general than, you know, Scandinavian people, right? It's like these are genetic things, and intelligence to some degree is genetic. It doesn't mean that just because that any individual is bound by that we can just say that this individual must be dumb because they're of this race or religion or, you know, anything like that. But those like, just bringing those facts to light is seen as racism and horrible, and you're like horrible person. But, you know, these are, like, it's not like someone's making up these things. These are like real things that and it's the same thing as, like, I mean, it's kind of ridiculous to think that, like, we're not all the same.
Right.
Even just, like, we're all equal given rights, but we're not all the same, because we breed animals, right? Like think about dog breeds, right? Like, you know, if you believe in an evolutionistic standpoint or a viewpoint, or that, you know, even to any degree, then we in the time span of humanity have bred dogs for different attributes and have encouraged certain attributes and discouraged certain attributes. So, like, there's no argument that there is a smarter dog and a dumber breed of dog, or a bigger or smaller breed of dog, or a more friendly or less friendly, or a more aggressive or less aggressive breed of dog. And so why would our biology be different than that? Like, we have had closed communities of segregated groups of tribes of tribal people that have developed within closed borders, and they have developed a certain set of traits and attributes in breeding. Now, it doesn't, again, it's not a reason to, like, to discriminate against person, or to take any way of their rights, or to call them less of a human being, or any of those things, or, you know, they still have equal rights. But to even make the distinction, to say that people are different, possibly in IQs, possibly in aggressive tendencies, possibly in mannerisms and temperance, or between the sexes. I mean, there's a big difference between a female black widow spider and a male black widow spider, because the male black widow spider is very tiny and gets his head bit off after he copulates, right? So, like there are differences, and, like, to even just point them out, and to not just say, like, we're tabula rasa, to like, if anyone says that we're not tabula rasa, we're not all a blank slate that society imprints on us, and we all have the perfectly same equal opportunities to develop our IQ and whatever, and our abilities in whatever, you know, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous, because if you don't agree to that tenet that we're all tabula rasa, then you're a heretic, racist, sexist, chauvinist pig, and your voice doesn't deserve to be heard at all, right? That's
I mean, with a lot of this is the thing that gets me too, is that people focus on, you know, these arguments that you're making and some of the other, you know, things that people say, you know, like James Damore, if we go back to his manifesto, you know, he points out women generally have these personality traits and men generally have these other personality traits. And, you know, our work environment rewards the ones that are generally male and not the ones that are generally female. We've driven Josh to drink. Anyway, so, but I'm looking at it and I'm going, you know, and some people came in and said, well, you know, he said that women are worse programmers than men, which is not what he said at all. But I look at that and I look at these arguments, and basically I'm saying, you know, even on that one vector, right, of personality type, or caring more about this or caring less about that, or you know, even IQ, when it comes down to the practicality of writing code or running a business or any of these other things, you know, your IQ or your personality or things like that, you know, they're one factor in many that make you good at what you do. And so, I mean, even making the case that, you know, men and women are different, or that the different races are different, it doesn't necessarily state in any way that makes them better or worse at a particular thing. It just means that they're going to approach it differently and probably have some different ideas about it, which is actually a healthy thing.
Well, and let me ask you a question. I mean, because this is like, suppose, like, okay, like just an objective question here, which I know this is a heretical question, but I have to ask the question: is it possible? In fact, is it not possible, but is it probable that if you ran the numbers, that either men or women will be better at programming? Right? I mean, like, if you think about it, like, think of so if that's not true, if not one of those is true, then the answer to that question is really alarming, because that means that somehow magically in the universe, it's a 50-50 split even. We're even, baby. Like, there's no advantage or disadvantage. It just genetically happened. Like God said, fuck this. We are going to make human beings equal in all the things that they pursue.
Well, statistically speaking, it'd be remarkable if you came out with some result that said that they were exactly equally good at programming. But even then, I mean, we have so many arguments over what makes good code and what makes a good coder that, you know, so one set of criteria is going to render one result and another set of criteria is going to render a different result. So
it depends on the metric, right?
Right.
But it's not sexist to say that there is metrics where one sex would have an advantage and one wouldn't. It's just it's logic. The logical conclusion is that if you ran the numbers, some sex would have an advantage. I'm not even taking the side of men being better programmers, because you know, some of the women programmers I've worked with have been better programmers. I'm just saying that probably there is probably either men or women are better programmers. Probably. I don't know. James Damore said that probably it's men, or maybe. I mean, but he's just saying kind of probably there is, and this is why I would think that this might be the case. Yeah. He wasn't even making that. He was just saying the more suited to the environment, like more happy in the environment, which if you thrive in an environment, you're probably going to be more successful. But my point is that, like, there is probably going to be one who is better at certain thing, and does it really matter? Like, it doesn't matter, because it doesn't matter what your natural inclination was. It matters what you level up to, right? It's like you roll the stats in D&D and you get some stats. Okay, so you have some D&D stats, and it's like, yeah, well, those stats matter when you're level 1, but they don't matter when you're level 36. Okay, when you're level 36, the level 36 guy, no matter if the level 1 guy rolled all 18s on his stats, he's going to crush the level 1 guy. It didn't even matter what the stats were. The stats matter at the very beginning. It's when you start at a thing, and it's kind of crazy too, because it's like, yes, there has to be. Okay, so I mean, I'll just take.
Well, there's a distribution on that too, right? And so there are going to be some people that move across that boundary of.
Right, individuals, right? Men have a higher variance in all things, right? But individuals can cross any boundary. But and there's always proof of this. But it even on the genetic, like, diversity, like, you know, racial terms, like, what category of people are the best athletes in the world in general, right? Black people, right? I mean, there's no like, and if that's not true, then why do we bring so many of them on to professional sports teams? Because they're damn good, because they have a higher genetic potential of being good at physical sports. Like, this is just how it is, right? And so, like, that's not racist to say. I mean, is it? Or is it like, do we need some diversity there because like there's not enough white guys playing basketball? I mean, there's plenty of them too that break out of the mold. I'm just saying, like, to recognize that certain groups of people, whether they're male or female, or different races or ethnicities, or even different religions or backgrounds or whatever, have certain advantages or disadvantages in certain areas of life, is not racist or sexist or anything. It's just scientific fact. Now, I believe firmly that anyone can overcome whatever disabilities or challenges that are present. And that's the thing that we should be focusing on, is like, how do we help anyone overcome and have an equal opportunity to be able to compete and to improve themselves in whatever passion or area of life that they want to pursue, rather than trying to like say, oh no, they're like, if you think that things are different and it's unequal, then you're, you know, that people aren't tabula rasa, like I said, then you're a racist, sexist pig. And
I have to say that is the thing with all of these arguments that I worry the most about, is that it encourages this victim thinking, and the second you think you don't have any control over the situation, you're right.
Right.
And you know, I mean, I don't have any illusions that I can, you know, grow 5 inches and go play in the NBA, right? But, you know, when it comes right down to it, if I get good enough, I mean, there was a guy that played for the Utah Jazz, John Stockton. I think he was like, I don't think he was even 6 foot.
Like 5. I think he was like 5'3" or something.
Right.
He was,
and you got Spud Webb too, right?
But yeah, but you know, he built up his skills and played in the NBA, and he was a starter for the Jazz because he was so dang good, you know. And so I mean, but the second I put that outside of my control, the second I you know, then it doesn't help. And I worry with some of these arguments that people say the deck is stacked against me, and I'm not even going to try.
Right.
And you know, or you know, there's no way it can get better, so you know, I'm not even going to try. And you know, that's more frightening to me than whether or not there's a slight bias in the community, to be perfectly honest.
Yep.
You know, I'm not saying we shouldn't solve bias problems, but that's a separate issue. I think for the most part, also, if people come in looking for that bias, they're going to find it.
Exactly.
So anyway, that said, I need to take off here in about 10 minutes.
Yeah. Do either of you guys have any thoughts?
That wasn't enough for you, Josh? Damn.
but let me loop this back to what we were talking about before, right? Because, you know, we were talking about looking over that cliff.
Yeah.
You know, and I guess I'll just make this my thought. But, you know, whether it's because you've been beaten up over things or whether you're afraid you're going to be, you know, which I think happens a lot with these particular areas, right? I'm a woman, I'm black, I'm a minority in some way, and you know, I don't look like or feel like all the other people in here, and so I don't know if I'll belong, I don't know if I'll fit, I don't know if I'll get hired, I don't know if I'll whatever. You know, it all comes back to that, you know, and you just got to decide to slog up that hill anyway. And maybe you're right, you know, maybe it is harder for people like you. You know, I mean, that's entirely possible. I don't know what all of the situations
doesn't matter.
are.
It doesn't matter what it's like for everyone else. What matters is like, what are you going to do?
What are you going to do? And that's the entire point, right? So, you know what? Sponsorship slowed down over the summer for me. It came down to what I did. It came down to me busting my butt to go find people. Yep. You know, did the market slow down? I don't know. Was it because it was summer? I don't know. Was it because, you know, some of these people were busy? I don't know. Maybe it was all of those things. But ultimately, it came down to me hustling and being out there and doing the work and then talking to the right people at the right time to pull out of the slump. And if I start focusing on why everybody else isn't doing what I want them to do, then I'm going to spend all of my time working on and worrying about things that I have zero control over. And it's not going to get me anywhere. And so, you know, just look at those things. Look at those. Look at the opportunities. Look at, you know, well, what can I do to just make it a little bit better? Even if it's still going to be hard. Even if it feels like the hill is just straight up and down. What can I do to make it a little bit easier? You know, maybe I'm going to go get some climbing shoes. Maybe I'm going to get some climbing gloves. Maybe I'll find a friend with a rope. Or maybe I'm just going to start climbing up the freaking cliff. But whatever it takes, it's up to me. I'm not going to get to the top of that cliff by talking about how hard it is. And I'm not going to get to the top of the cliff by complaining about the other people who seem to have an easier time going up. And I'm not going to have an easier time going up the cliff by complaining about the people that might be in my way.
Preach it, brother. Or go find another cliff that you can climb where you have an advantage.
That's fair. Totally fair.
Right.
Decide if you don't want, maybe you don't actually want to climb that particular cliff.
Yep.
Just don't complain about it. My thought is going to be, so this is, I'm writing some emails for Simple Programmer this week that have been fun. So we got this email. I won't name any names here, but we got this email from a guy who applied at a company for a development job, and he had to jump through a bunch of hoops. They had to do they wanted him to do a coding exercise and do a bunch of video interviews and stuff, and he was kind of offended and felt like they weren't taking him seriously as a professional, and they weren't he wasn't a special snowflake.
Sorry for laughing.
And so he wanted to complain. So his idea was to complain to the hiring manager during the hiring process to try to right this injustice. And so the principle that I'm going to be bringing out here in these emails is that I want to read this book, but I've heard that the book Winning Through Intimidation by Robert Ringer is one of the principles in there is that somebody in business always has the upper hand. In every business negotiation situation, somebody always has the upper hand. And so your job is to make sure that it's you so that you can be benevolent, in that situation and not submit yourself. Because I think, especially for developers, a lot of us don't want to believe that. We want to believe that we're coming in as equals, and it's going to be equal partnership, and it's just one big happy family, and there's there's no management. It's like a flat hierarchy, and that's just not how it works. And so your job is to position yourself so that you have the upper hand, because you're going to handle that better than if you're under somebody's thumb.
Yep. You saw the video I did on that one, right? On the email there.
No, I haven't watched it.
You haven't? Oh, yeah. I did a whole video response to that.
I figured you did. It's hard to dig them up. There's a lot of them. There's 1,800 or something now. So.
But yeah, I basically said it's very similar, the same thing.
John, I'm going to tell the story that you told about. You told it on this show actually about the guy that drove 90 minutes to buy your table and then tried to negotiate with you.
Oh yeah, exactly.
he's like, well, I want $20 off because I drove 90 minutes to come here and get this table. And John's like, do you not understand leverage? You can drive 90 minutes back with no table, and I don't care. That doesn't hurt me at all. So,
it's a really important lesson, I think, in life. Yes. I'm trying to debate between. I think I'll go ahead and piggyback off of that for my thought, because we've already hit the life isn't fair thing, which is essentially this. It's really important in life to realize when you're in the weaker position and to pick your battles. You always want to fight from a position of strength. And when you're in the weaker position, I mean, there's plenty of times when I am compromised, right? You can't always be if I walk down the street and I see a guy that's twice my size, I'm a pretty big guy. I'm twice most guys' size. But if he's twice my size and he says, I'm going to be a little bit deferent to him. I'm going to show him a little bit of deference, because I know that I'm not winning that battle. Right. It doesn't mean that I'm going to let him get away with everything. Right. At some point, you got to stand your ground and be willing to die for it. But there's the chance of me fighting that hill. Maybe I'll come back and get him later. You know what I'm saying? There's always, you can surrender now and come back and have a victory later, but you got to know when to surrender. You got to know when you're outmatched. You got to know when someone's got the upper hand, like you said. And in that situation, you can't play like you have the upper hand. You have to play the game as it lies. And the same thing, when you have the upper hand, you should push the upper hand, because you know that you've got it. I mean, this is the game of life. And I think so many people, they get so upset and they get their panties all in a bunch because they want everything to be fair and they want everyone to be on equal footing and equal ground and to have equal advantages all the time. And that's never, this is whatever we've layered on top of the world and society with prettiness and magical, butterflies and unicorns and stuff. It's still at the base a dog eat dog fucking world, and it always will be. And violence will always win the day. Power will always win. And so even though we've tried to to temper these aspects of biology and nature, which they if you go to, you know, the wild and see that they are, we have only created an illusion, a facade over them, right? It is all within our hearts. We have these same impulses and drives. Even though we've created that facade, we have to recognize that underneath it all, in all of society and all the niceness and prettiness and ties, is still that ferocity, and we have to recognize it and show deference when we need to, and press an advantage when we need to as well, right? It doesn't mean to abuse people, and doesn't mean to let yourself be abused, but it just means knowing these subtle differences in how you position yourself. And some days you fight the battle because you're on the high ground, and some days you retreat because you're on the low ground and you're less equipped, right? You could always come back and fight the battle when you have the advantage, yeah. But it's a waste of effort and energy to fight the battle at the wrong time. There we go.
Yep. Unless it's a battle that has to be fought, it has to be fought now.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, if you're okay dying for it, then sometimes there are hills to die on.
Yeah. But all right, guys.
All righty. This was a high level episode of the
Yes.
Bring on the hate mail.
Or some may say low level.
Oh man. I you know, I mean, I can see that some people are probably going to be uncomfortable with or offended by some of the stuff that we talked about here, but you know, I mean, challenge your thinking a little bit. You know, just think through it. If you think we're wrong, let us know. You know, but it's one thing to say
at devchat.tv.
Yeah, go for it.
Exactly.
Seriously, I don't care. Because honestly, you know, and if somebody comes in and they want to be a jerk, you know, I can send that to the black hole in my inbox, and that's fine. You know, if you want to have a real discussion about this, you know, that's fine too. But I find that so many people, they just go straight to the nuclear option, and it's not right. Yeah. And anyway, we kind of belabored that point, but it's interesting, and you know, I'm curious to see how people choose to react to it.
Yeah, and I got to just say one last thing about that too, which is that, like, I've just come to the point where I'm like, you know what, fuck it, I'm gonna say what I'm gonna say, and it's you know, and my intention, some people can judge it poorly, but if you're gonna come at me and call me a sexist or racist or whatever, pig or whatever, you're gonna have to come at me with evidence of real harm that I've actually done to individual people,
right?
Where you're gonna have to show me where I actually acted in a racist way, or actually acted in a sexist way, where I shamed or harmed someone from this viewpoint. Like, not just saying words, not just having philosophy and dialogue, but if you can't come at me, and again, and I challenge anyone in that considers them a social justice warrior, if you see someone actually doing something, right, actually physically harming someone, verbally harming someone with intent, there we go. That's or actively discriminating. There we go. Then you've got a case. But other than that, you're gonna judge someone based on what you perceive that their words are saying. You know, well, you have to judge the intent behind it, and that's that's pretty difficult to do, because it's still innocent until proven guilty. I believe here. Maybe not in some of the countries I've visited, but
well, and just to jump on that point, I mean, you know, you mentioned, you know, I'm going to say what I'm going to say, and it took me a long time to come around to that, you know, and we're talking about this on this show, but one of the things that I found was holding me back was just not being consistent with who I am and what I believe, and that basically a lot of it was just not speaking out when I felt like I needed to.
Yeah. And
so I think people are going to see a bit more of that. I'm going to start pulling the John, and I'm going to start doing YouTube videos. I've been doing a vlog for the last month and a half, and you know, I'm going to start talking about code and coding community, and some of the things I'm going to say are going to make people mad.
Right.
But you know what? I feel like that's the way I am called to serve the coding community. And, you know, by talking about some of these things, hopefully, yeah, we can create a dialogue and make it happen. But, you know, I held my tongue for a long time on some of these issues, and I can't do it anymore. And it's not because I'm angry at people. It's just because I don't feel like I have consistently represented myself as who I am.
Right.
and I need to do that more. And as I do that, I think my success level is going to go to the next level. And it's not based on because people are going to send me more money or anything like that. It's just based on the fact that I can then move ahead without that stress of not feeling like I'm being who I need to be.
Right.
Do we have any thoughts for the week? This was this is like the Lord of the Rings ending, where there was like 20 minutes of like running towards each other, hugging.
Yeah. Anyway, I got to go meet somebody for lunch. So
okay. I got to go record my book. I'll see you.
All right. Bye.
Bye.